Parks Casino and Sportsbook, the #1 casino in Pennsylvania. This is how you win at Parks Casino, the only casino and sportsbook that I recommend. 'Tis the season to visit Parks Casino for the Christmas in July sweepstakes. This is the place to be for fun, action, and entertainment all summer long. Concerts, dining, they have it all. Summer happy hours with cool cocktails, 25 craft beers on tap at the open-air Liberty Bell Beer Garden. Dine at the award-winning Parks Grill Steakhouse. Enjoy farm-to-table fare at Liberty Bell Gastropub, the Bamboo Noodle House, or Chicky and Pete's. Can't beat Chicky and Pete's. And headliners all summer long at the state-of-the-art Excite Center. Visit Parks Casino for all the details. Street Road exit off I-95 and the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Got to be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Time now for the headlines from Smerconish.com, the newsletter. This weekend, I listened to the latest episode of TC After Dark on a car ride. I was teary-eyed, but ultimately found it uplifting and particularly enjoyed how TC does not like being corrected by Joey either.
He was so thrilled that I left that in there. He assumed that I would edit it out, and he loves that part of it.
Well, first of all, Joey is a very good and honest reporter of information. It's like, let me summarize from a medical perspective exactly what went on with Augie. But like every time, TC would say something and Joey would call her out, I took note of the fact, like TC quickly, as she does with me, then tried to respond and protect her reputation. Listen to it again. Listen to it again and see if you don't find what I'm discussing.
I am the same back, of course, exactly as I am with everybody.
Wow, no quarter.
I tried to stop.
Anyway, it was a great
Thank
episode. And I have to say, and I apologize if this is a spoiler, but when you can see what went on in the emergency veterinary center when there's an announcement made that Augie is being discharged and all the doors open and everybody comes out and applauds. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
What a wonderful moment.
As we said in the podcast, they are, unfortunately, because they are a very serious hospital, emergency vet hospital, they're used to sending people home with a leash and a collar and no dog.
Heartbreaking.
So this was very, very special for them. And she was there for 9 days. So she met everybody. Everybody knew her. It was really something.
Well done, TC. Really Thanks. A great episode. Really a great issue. And the only thing that kind of bums me out is I know the listenership for the Augie episode is going to outperform any of my prior appearances on TC After Dark. All right.
You're still the solid winner.
Go listen.
Go
listen. Go listen. 9,827 votes were cast on the Friday survey question. I've got to come full circle on this. Must President Biden raise the murder of Jamal Khashoggi when he meets with MBS? 63.83% said yes. Now the question is, did he? Peter Baker had a really good analysis in the New York Times. As President Biden told the tale, it sounded pretty dramatic. After a meeting with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler, for the first time since he took office, the president insisted that he had pointedly blamed him for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. He basically said that he was not personally responsible for it. Mr. Biden recounted to reporters, the only hitch? That's not the way it happened, according to the Saudi officials. Adel al-Jaber, Saudi Minister of State and Foreign Affairs, who was present for the encounter, told reporters he hadn't heard the president blame the Crown Prince. And then says Peter Baker in the New York Times, Mr. Biden is by nature a storyteller with a penchant for embellishment. He's often told the story of a meeting with President Vladimir Putin in 2011 as vice president and telling him, quote, I'm looking into your eyes and I don't think you have a soul. Others present at the time had no memory of that exchange. Similarly, the now president has described an unvarnished confrontation in 1993 with Slobodan Milosevic, the Serbian nationalist leader who unleashed an ethnic war in the Balkans. I think you're a damn war criminal and you should be tried as one. Biden, then a senator, related having told Milosevic, according to a 2007 memoir, promises to keep other people in the room, later said they didn't recall that line being said. Well, this is interesting. Now the Saudi question can plague Donald Trump because relatives of individuals killed on September 11 are now urging the former president to cancel a Saudi-backed golf tournament set to be held this month at Trump National in Bedminster. And then I think Live will wrap up at Doral, another Trump course in the later summer. Brett Eagleson, who's been a guest on this program, I think on multiple occasions, the president of 9/11 Justice, said that he emailed a letter to a Trump aide in the afternoon yesterday. In the letter, the group noted that Trump had told Fox News in February of 2016, quote, "Who blew up the World Trade Center? It wasn't the Iraqis, it was a Saudi." Will Trump cancel that gig at Bedminster? I say he will not. Saturday, and if you missed it, will you please watch this because it's posted at Smerconish.com. It's in today's newsletter. A commentary that I delivered on CNN. I went a little Tucker on CNN on Saturday. And by that, I mean, I took my time and I delivered about an 8-minute commentary, although he gets to deliver like 15-minute commentaries. But it was something that I've always wanted to do. And it really, TC can attest to this, drew quite a reaction. But it all led to the survey question: are concerns about America's unraveling overblown? We had 28,349 votes cast, and 78% and change said no, they're not overblown, meaning they are legit. But I tried to be an equal opportunity offender. And TC, as you well know, I flat out said, relative to 2024, with regard to the leading two candidates, one of them is unfit and the other is too old. And some people, according to you, wish I hadn't made half that observation.
Well, it's so interesting because some people just hear one part and that is what they take away. Let me give you an example. So Joan Fox, I watched your recent hack job on President Biden. You are an arrogant, bigoted windbag.
Yep. Well, I'm only one of those. I'm only one of those.
So she didn't hear
windbag.
But she didn't hear half of it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, there in the order in which I made my presentation with Trump first and made the case for his unbiased. So she doesn't comment on that. She's okay with that. But when I then, relying on data, citing news accounts, say, come on, he's too old. Biden, that's the part that, raised her hackles, as they would say.
But your overwhelming part, what your real point is everything that we're looking at overblown? That was what you were really asking.
I was asking
about the state of the country.
Our national nervous breakdown, which are Jeffrey Goldberg's words said to Brian Stelter.
Right, exactly. So interestingly, okay, so Michael says, I'll answer in a Smerconish way. Yes and no. People think we live in violent times and are preparing themselves accordingly. The beneficiaries are political parties and activists who thrive on making people wound up crazy.
True. I mean, there's absolute truth in that. And my guest, I was so happy that if you remember, I mean, there were a number of guests here on POTUS last week where we addressed the data on this subject. So we had Michael Mazer from the RAND Corporation, who's talked and looked at information where most Americans have a sense of foreboding about the country. And then there's Max Fisher in the New York Times, who said, hey, wait a minute, things are actually not so bad. We're pretty damn lucky to be alive and living in this country at this time. He was channeling Steven Pinker from Harvard. Pinker was my guest on CNN on Saturday. Ram Abramowitz was also a guest of mine. He's an economic historian from Stanford who, with an economic historian from Princeton, looked at census data. I mean, this is not just seat of the pants is what I'm trying to say. And I worked all of that information into the commentary, and I raised the question of whether this sense of foreboding that many of us feel is really warranted. Pinker argued largely that it isn't, but that's not the way the survey question turned out.
Right. And one more, Garth says, it's the media that's unraveling. You guys, I know you love it when people say that, you guys persistently focus and rehash the negatives in the country, tone down the negativity, and the nation's stress level will go down as well.
Right. But Garth, and by the way, love your music. The question is, would anybody watch if it were all happy talk? Because in the same way that we rubberneck on the highway, people get attracted to Uvalde.
A couple more. Kelly says, Michael, what happened? You go off to Europe for a couple weeks and come back to the US and your whole shtick has changed. What happened to there is more that unites us than divides us? Are you prepping us for a move? What does that mean? Does she think you're going to Fox News?
No. A move in my opinion, I'm sure is what she meant. Any more TC social media reaction on that?
Well, there was one that I thought was interesting. Brian Stelter retweeted your video. So he retweeted it with a quote, mostly what distressed me about America when I was overseas was reading about violence, ... and retweeted your commentary, which was nice of him. Further retweet from one Keith Olbermann, who said, the now decade and a half idea that this guy Smerconish adds anything to the national dialogue that could not be provided by a bright 9-year-old is a continuing and unsolvable mystery. Why so snarky, Keith? What's going on with you? I loved your response.
Right. My response, I don't have it exactly as I said it, but this is a bid.
I have it.
Oh, I'm sure you do. Well, tell me if my memory is accurate. I responded and said, this is a bid for relevance by Olbermann. I mean, I didn't even know he still wants to be involved, but apparently he does. I know he wanted the Maddow gig and didn't get it. I know that he's been fired from any number of places. What he does day to day, I don't know. So I guess he wants to be.
He tweets a lot.
So I guess he wants to be relevant by attacking me. But the bigger observation that I have is it's proof positive that among the many that I've encouraged to watch my speech from the Reagan Library on my YouTube channel, clearly he did, because he gets name checked in my speech when I'm explaining what is wrong with the polarized media. And I walk through all of that which happened on the right. And then I talk about Olbermann on the left, doing the same kind of shtick, trying to attract mouse clicks and eyeballs to TV programs and
stuff at the screen
and
Don't
saying that
when he did all that?
Worst person in the world. And,
that's
and
what it was.
I in the Reagan Library, what I remind people of is this is a guy who gleefully spoke of George W. Bush urinating on the Constitution of the United States. So he's the issue. People like him, he is just from the left. He's another Morton Downey Jr. That's it.
There you go.
So, okay, Sunday survey result. 30 years ago in predicting elections, James Carville famously said, it's the economy, stupid. Is it still that today? 82% said yes. And today's survey question, because these are the words of Bernie Sanders yesterday on one of the Sunday morning shows, he said that Joe Manchin is intentionally sabotaging the president's agenda. What the American people want, what a majority of us in the Democratic caucus want. Nothing new about this. That's him with Martha Raddatz on ABC. Survey question today asks, is Joe Manchin, quote, intentionally sabotaging the president's agenda? So make sure you're voting. I would point out again that there are two things that are posted at Smerconish.com today that really require your time and attention. One of them is read the actual report, the 77-page report on Uvalde. I've got a link to the report. And the second is that Graham Wood piece in the Atlantic about MBS. It's 40 pages long. I enjoyed it Sunday afternoon when I was able to put aside, 45 minutes and really concentrate on it, but it's terrific. This Greenwood Park Mall story from Indy is a good guy with a gun story. It is a good guy with a gun story. A lone man with a long gun killed 3 people before an armed bystander killed him in the Greenwood Park Mall food court Sunday evening, according to the Greenwood Police Chief Jim Eisen. 2 people were injured. It appears that he had a rifle with several magazines of ammunition, entered the food court, began shooting. The Good Samaritan was a 22-year-old. The real hero of the day is a citizen who was lawfully carrying a firearm in that food court and was able to stop the shooter as soon as it began. You might remember we recently spoke here, and I did on television as well, about the good guy with a gun. There was a wonderful New York Times analysis of data. How often does it happen? The answer is very rarely. In fact, Adam Langford, who's a professor at the University of Alabama and has studied mass shootings, was quoted in the story and then was my guest here talking about it. And here's the data from the New York Times. Again, taking nothing away from Indy, thank God. a 22-year-old Good Samaritan was in a position and did something about it. Because often I've raised the question in the past, hey, I wonder how often there's somebody who is carrying, but in the heat of the moment just doesn't feel comfortable getting involved. In the New York Times data, 433 active shooters in 2 decades. Think of that number, 433. 249 attacks ended before the police arrived. In 185 of those, the attacker left the scene or committed suicide. So that's usually what happens. The gunman leaves before the cops arrive or offs himself. That left 64 cases. Again, we started with 433. Now we're down to 64. 42 times subdued by a bystander, not with a gun, a fight. And in 22 cases, were shot by a bystander. Of the 22, 12 were citizens because 10 were security personnel. Or said differently, only 12 of the 249 that ended before police arrived were due to a good guy with a gun. So thank God, there was somebody there in Indy, but the Hollywood ending is rare. Aaron Blake on today's program from the Washington Post. I'm a sucker anytime there's one of these lists. Who are the likely, Republican or Democratic candidates? Rank them 1 through 10. Aaron Blake, Joe Biden is still number 1, followed by Mayor or Secretary Pete, then Kamala Harris. Amy Parms and Morgan Chalfant in The Hill today talking about 2024 and how maybe the best argument for Biden is Trump. Because Biden still beats Trump, according to the New York Times Siena survey. Associated Press took a deep dive and looked at ballot box drop boxes. You, of course, know that the Wisconsin Supreme Court just said that drop boxes are not allowed under state law and can no longer be widely used. Well, the expanded use of drop boxes for mailed ballots during the 2020 election did not lead to any widespread problems, according to an AP survey of state election officials across the U.S., R's and D's. How about this one? This really, I thought was of interesting. Fareed Zakaria, TC. You don't think of Fareed Zakaria as being a lefty or a righty, do you? I mean, I think of Fareed as being an intellectual and a down the middle, let's follow the news and information and data and science kind of guy.
I think of him as just so smart. So smart. That's how I think of him. And foreign analysis. So when I'm thinking of foreign affairs, et cetera, that's who I think of.
So he writes a column for the Washington Post. And I know as a columnist, former columnist, you don't write the headlines. The Post would write the headlines. The headline that they put on said, "Forget pronouns. Democrats need to become the party of building things." His closing paragraph was this: "This is not a perception problem, it's a reality problem," writes Fareed Zakaria. "Democrats need to once more become the party that gets stuff done, builds things, makes government work for people. That's a lot more important to most Americans than using the right pronouns." Chasten Buttigieg, among those, as the Daily Mail said, keen to pour scorn on Zakaria. He tweeted, quote, "Addressing someone by the name pronoun they prefer is free, easy, and kind. Using them builds community and belonging. Democrats can walk and chew gum." I'm flabbergasted that in response to the blowback, the Washington Post changed the headline. Fareed had addressed in his conclusion the pronoun issue, if that's the proper way to cast it. But after there was social media backlash, the Washington Post changed the way in which they cast that story. Don't miss, from the Philadelphia Inquirer, a story about a professor at the University of Pennsylvania Law School, my alma mater. Her name is Amy Wax. Do you remember her? She was a guest on the program and then claimed on a live broadcast here on POTUS that she wasn't sure we were doing live radio, and TC went back while she was on air and read aloud the email where we had invited her and said it'll be a live broadcast.
So uncomfortable.
What's uncomfortable are some of the things that Amy Wax has said that have drawn the ire of law school dean Ted Ruger, who wants the faculty senate to convene a hearing and ultimately levy a major sanction against her. A little sampling of her wares. She told a black faculty colleague that it is, quote, rational to be afraid of black men in elevators. when asked by a black student if she agreed with a panelist that black people are inferior to white people, she responded, "You can have two plants that grow under the same conditions, and one will just grow higher than the other." She is, in my opinion, unfit, and she's an embarrassment to my alma mater. There's lots of other great stuff at Smerconish.com, including from the Wall Street Journal, the second most popular story, armpit. TC, you are bare-shouldered in this YouTube broadcast. Okay, lift your arms. Whoa. I see it. You're adhering to the modern trend. Armpit hair is back.
I am not.
You're not?
What is wrong with you?
I thought I saw something.
Not, but I am told by young women close to me that I am not allowed to roll my eyes at armpit hair. That is fine. It is normal. It is fabulous. So I have been corrected by people in my orbit who shall remain nameless who say armpit hair is fine. So I
love that despite the fact that it's July, it is a really busy news cycle. And yet the second most popular story at the Wall Street Journal, armpit hair is back. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on YouTube. Vote at Smerconish.com on the Bernie Sanders, Joe Manchin issue. Subscribe to the newsletter. See ya.